Hello, hello, hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So yesterday, have you checked the mail? I had
Yes,
emailed.
sir.
Yes, I had sent you almost four, 5 to 6 copies of machine design, various authors. In that specifically, machine design by Khurmi Gupta, machine design by B.B. Bhandari, then uh, Shom series, machine design practice by Hall, and then two more copies. One is for machine design by Shigley, machine design by Robert Norton, and a PhD design data book is sent to you. Hope you had received that. Everyone has checked it. Have you received it or not?
Yes, sir. We got it.
Okay, fine. Then I had also mailed you the PPTs of leftover part of Unit 1, that was weighted point method and Ashby technique, and the examples what we had discussed yesterday. So PPTs of that is being also mailed. You can go through it, and then the recordings of the lectures which we had conducted on WebEx, that is also mailed to you. Okay. So now today we are in a position to start with unit number 2, and most of the numericals for this unit number 2 you can get it from Machine Design Practice Shom series by Hall. Okay, that copy is also mailed to you. Only the problem is it's a older copy, and the units over there are in CGS, whereas we go through SI units. So only that is the problem. You can refer the problem and procedure through that, and you can attempt those problems through SI units. Okay. So now we'll start with unit number 2, that is second unit is on loads and stresses in machine parts. Okay. So for that I had already told you that you have to refer the fundamentals of strength of materials. This course you had already covered in your second year. You are also quite aware of what do you mean by a force, a load, what is the difference between force and a load, then what do you mean by stresses, what are different types of stresses. But still we will revise that, so that is basically required for analysis of any design of any machine component. So before going for what are different forces or stresses acting on a component, we'll first discuss upon the what do you mean by modes of failure, or what are different kinds of failure. In when we had discussed upon the uh, procedure to design a machine component, then we had came across with this modes of failure, or once you had identified the mode of failure, then you need to find out the dimensions as per the appropriate or critical mode of failure. So what is mode of failure? Yes, what is the mode of failure? It's been discussed.
Sir,
uh, yes,
it is the way by which any component fails mostly.
yes, it is the
Different components fail in a manner mostly.
yes, so it is the technique, or it is the way with which the component can fail. So most often we come across with different types of stresses, and then the component can fail because of the combination of these stresses, or it can be failed because of one of that mode. That mode we call it as a critical mode of failure. Okay. So if you go through this now, what are different modes of failures or kinds of failure, that we'll discuss now. So as we human beings suffer from various kinds of diseases, and we take special precautions to avoid or delay avoid or delay its destructive effect. So on an average, we human beings, you find that we fail or we suffer from one or two types of diseases, and we are cautious about those diseases. And throughout our life, we take care that we are not prone to that disease, or that disease is not uh, leading to its critical effect. Similarly, a machine component or a structure is susceptible to one or more kinds of failure. So even though it's a non, there is some disturbance. So I'll request everyone to mute from your end. When I ask the question, then only you can unmute yourself. There is some disturbance created. I don't know from where it is coming, but it's requested that you can mute yourself, and only when I ask some questions, then you can unmute to answer that. Okay. So as we human beings suffer through various diseases, and in that one or two are the critical diseases uh, for which we are cautious about, and we take care that that disease is not becoming critical, and we will not fail, or uh, it may not lead to the severe damage for our life. So in similar way, the various components of any structure or machine, it is susceptible to one or two or even more kinds of failure. Like say roller bearing is most likely to fail through fatigue failure. So likewise, there are different kinds of failure with which that component can fail, and our intention is to identify that various kinds of failure. Even though there are listed out are almost 10 to 12 kinds of failure, but among that you will find most often a component is related to one or two to three kinds of failure. And as a designer, you should take care that that component throughout its life will not fail across or with those two to three kinds of failure. Among this two to three kinds of failure, one kind of failure is most critical, which we call it as critical mode of failure, and you should take care of that while designing that component. So most often the dimensions of the component are found out against that critical mode of failure, and then once you find out the dimensions against that critical mode of failure, you check that dimensions with other modes of failure with which the component is subjected to. And once all these kinds of failure or mode of failure are safe, then you take care, then you say that whatever dimensions you had got, that is safe while designing. Okay. So now what are different kinds of failure that we'll see now? Yes, these are the common causes of failure which leads to different kinds of failure. Uh, First one is yielding failure. Most often the components are subject to yielding failure, and as a designer you find that almost design is based against or on the basis of yielding. Almost 90% of the components, they are designed so that the component is not yielding. Now what is yielding failure? Yes, anyone? What do you mean by yielding failure? Yes. Yes,
Mission
anyone?
will without any application with the application of very small stress or negligible stress.
Can you repeat again?
The deformation will occur with the application of very negligible stress or no any stress.
No any stress, but up to which point or up to what?
Yield points,
Okay,
Yield point.
up to yield point. Then what will happen beyond yield point, or we will call it as a yielding failure? What will happen?
After the yield point, the deformation will occur without any application of stress or strain. Stress without any application of stress.
Okay. Anybody else want to add something in that? Yes.
Sir, Hooke's law will fail.
Hooke's law will fail means what?
And deformation occurs.
Yes.
Plastic deformation. That's it.
sir, Hooke's law will fail after the yield point.
So what is Hooke's law then?
not be proportional to strain.
Yes, stress is not
Strain is
proportional to strain.
Proportional to strain.
Then second thing, you will find that beyond yield point, you will get a permanent deformation. What it means that up to yield point, if you load any component, if you apply the critical load or maximum load on the component, you will bear that load. And then when you stop the load, or if you unload the component will regain its original shape and size up to yield point. So component is not failing against yielding, but when it goes beyond the yield point, what happens? As soon as the component is loaded, it will take the load and it will deform accordingly. It will have stress as well as strain. But beyond the yield point, as soon as you unload the component, you will find it will not regain its original shape and size. The circular shaft may be somewhat deformed or something like that will happen. It will become oblong. No doubt that changes will be marginal. That can't be noticed immediately with the naked eyes. But I mean to say that after removing that load, the shape and size will not remain same. It will change. And then from design point of view, that is not acceptable, because the components are assembled using some tolerances, and that will affect that, and thereby the performance of that component will affect. So failure over here, it doesn't mean that we are expecting to be that component to be failed totally, that is failed in two parts or broken into two parts. Even the component goes beyond its yield point, it is in working in a yielding zone, a plastic zone, then we treat that component is failed from design point of view. So first very important type of failure is a yielding failure, and most of the components are designed on the basis of yielding failure. Up to 80 to 90% of the components you find, they are designed to take care against yielding failure. To make the component safe against yielding failure, to take care of
Yes.
strength and
So,
stiffness of the component. Yes, any doubts?
so yielding point is second yielding point or the lower yielding point. There are two yielding points in the strain stress graph. One is upper yielding point
Okay,
and
I'll just come to that. Probably I have that graph.
is the lower yielding point. So which one after which yielding point
Okay, I'll just come to that. I have.
point that there is a failure?
Yes, here you'll find point A is almost called as a linear range or proportional limit, and thereafter at point, can you see this slide, everyone? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so at point B you find uh, up to this, that is the yield stress, we get it within this, it is acceptable. I mean, up to 8 point it is proportional limit, what you call it as lower yield point. But again, beyond that, slightly above you go for, that is point B, where beyond that you find stress is not at all proportional to strain, and you get you start to get permanent deformation in the component. So you have to go up to point B, that is where you mark as a yield stress of the component. Clear with this? Okay. And most often for elastic materials, you will come to know that you go for 20% offset of that, which we call it as a proof stress. When you come across with different types of stresses, you will come to know at that time. But for time being, you should remember that first kind of failure is a yielding failure, and in that we ensure that component doesn't go beyond point B. If you see the stress strain diagram, beyond point B, we try to avoid the loading of the component. Whatever you design it up to point B. You take care that that component at its most critical load or worst loading point, that is creating the stresses which is within the acceptable limits of point B. Clear with this? Okay. I hope your doubt is clear with this.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So coming back to the different kinds of failure, what we are discussing. So to take care of yielding failure, it is very necessary that you should ensure that strength and stiffness, these are the two parameters which are considered. And in this, basically for ductile materials, you find that you take care of yield stress, but whereas for brittle materials, you don't have a yield point, so hence you take it for ultimate strength. Clear with this? So very common kind of failure, that is the yielding failure, and you'll find to design the component against yielding failure, your strength and stiffness of the component is checked. And obviously, the induced stresses should be less than the yield strength of the component. Okay. I hope you are very clear with the yielding failure. Any doubt regarding yielding failure? Yes? Any doubts regarding yielding failure?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. So now next, that is deflection beyond certain limit. Most often you find the components are designed on the basis of strength, but the components where you find deflection, this particular criteria was at our times or when design was newly started, deflection was not very much thought of. So deflection, in most cases, you find the component is safe in terms of strength, but from deflection point of view, it is going beyond its certain limit. Generally, the shaft, when it is rotating at very high speed, then it deflects, and that along with strength or along with yielding failure, you need to again check the deflection of that component, and that should be within permissible limits. Okay. So a lot of components like drilling of shafts or the shafts rotating at high speeds, the turbine blades, then the wings of the aircraft, all this you have to see that that deflection is within permissible limits so that the component is not failing against deflection. And to make a component safe against deflection, you take care of stiffness. So what is stiffness? Yes, probably in some of the lecture, in one of the lecture, we had discussed on stiffness. So what is stiffness? Yes, what is stiffness?
To resist load.
Ability to resist load. Okay, fine. And its formula is? What is the formula for stiffness?
F by delta
F by
delta
delta L. Okay, so that is load per unit deflection. Okay, so what will be its unit? Unit of stiffness? Yes. Yes, what will be the unit of stiffness?
Newton per meter.
Newton per meter. Okay, so stiffness says that it is the amount of load which a component can withstand without creating large deflection, or how much amount of load that component can withstand per unit deflection. That is nothing but stiffness. So when you are considering deflection of the component as a kind of failure, then you should cross check the stiffness in components like design of safety walls, then design of springs. You come across with these terms. Okay, so in that the stiffness matters a lot. So along with strength, for such components, deflection is also cross-checked. So induced deflection should be always less than that of the permissible deflection. Okay. Then next kind of failure, that is buckling failure. So what is buckling failure, and in which cases you get the buckling failure? Yes. For which components you get the buckling failure?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Columns.
Buckling is the bending of a beam at the middle because of load applied. In I-beams and those, buckling happens
No. That is
usually.
you mixing bending with buckling. Bending is somewhat different than buckling. So what is buckling? What you are talking about, that is of bending, I-beams or something like that, and the deflection at the center. That is totally for bending failure. But what is buckling? And you get that in some critical components. Typical components, you find you have a buckling failure.
In
Yes.
columns. Then
Yes,
In I-beams.
in columns.
Long,
columns.
In columns. So what that buckling failure is?
Compressive load beyond the critical load.
Compressive load beyond the critical load in case of columns, or generally you have a thin members or slender member if they are subjected to a axial compressive load, like your building columns, your panels, then your structures of any machines, they are subject to axial compressive load. है ना? So if that member is very thin member, we call it as a slender member, and if that slenderness ratio is coming greater than one particular value, then we treat that particular component is a column and you design it against buckling failure. So what is that slenderness ratio? Slenderness ratio?
L by K.
L by K. Yes. What is K in that?
Radius of gyration. Least radius of gyration.
Okay, least radius of gyration. So L by K, or in some cases we take that as length to cross section ratio also, L by D ratio, but actually it is L by K ratio. And this slenderness ratio, if it is greater than 3.5, then you find if that member is subject to axial compressive load, then there are probability of buckling of that particular component. And to make buckling is what? It is toppling along its length. Suddenly that component, without giving it indicates, tries to topple or bend along its longitudinal axis. That is called as buckling under the action of axial compressive load. Okay, so to take care of the component against buckling failure, you have to find out the critical load or crippling load. WCR is the critical load or crippling load that is found out by which equations? If you recall, in strength of material, this has been covered. So critical load is found out by which equations? Yes.
Euler's equation.
Euler's, or you call it as Euler's equation. Okay, Euler's equation, and there's one more equation, which is that. Yes. Other than Euler's equation, you can use one more equation to find out critical load. Yes, anyone? Yes. So you will find, other than Euler's equation, we use Johnson's equation to find the critical load. So either using Euler's equation or Johnson's equation, you have the criteria and then end fixed coefficient, and as per that you need to decide that which equation you will be using, either Euler's or Johnson's, and then you find out as critical load. Then obviously your applied load should not be greater than the critical load, or your critical load should be greater than the applied load. So if that is the case, then the component is safe against buckling failure. If your applied load goes beyond the critical load, then component has to fail. A component is bound to fail because of buckling failure. So this is a typical kind of failure which you generally find in slender members or thin members which are loaded against axial compressive load. Okay. The next kind of failure is a fatigue failure. This is very common failure in most of the structural components. Almost 80 to 90% of the components, they are subjected due to fatigue failure. So what is fatigue failure? Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes, so failure due to the cyclic loading.
Failure due to cyclic loading or repetitive loading, we call it as a fatigue failure. Yes. So as we had discussed one example, that is generally the roller bearings fail due to fatigue failure. So most of the components which are subject to repetitive loads, once you load the component, it works for the cycles together, or you have one working period. Once you start the machine, it works for that total working hours for 8 hours or something like that, and then you go for stop of that. So continuously up to 8 hours, that machine is under stress or under load, and that load or stress keeps on repeating. So that creates a cyclic stresses or repetitive stresses, which leads to the failure, which you call as a fatigue failure. A simple example of this fatigue failure is that if you take a bucket full of water and if you try to hold it in your hand, then you can find that if I hold this bucket in this position like this, I can bear it for few particular time, and then after some duration you will find that you are unable to hold that bucket, and that is because of the repetitive cyclic load which keeps acting at your shoulder. And this type of load we call it as a fatigue load or cyclic load or repetitive load that leads to the fatigue failure. And here you will find it's not your yield strength or ultimate strength. To make the components safe against fatigue failure, you have to take care of the endurance limit. We will come to what is endurance limit when you come across design against fluctuating loads. At least for this course, you don't have design against fluctuating loads. In next course, that is MD2, you will come across with design against fluctuating loads. So you'll find SE is the endurance limit which accounts for all different factors. You have almost 5 to 6 factors multiplied by ultimate strength. That will be the endurance limit of that particular material. Okay, so to make a component safe against failure, you have to take care of endurance limit, and almost 80 to 90% of the components you will find they fail because of fatigue failure. And when you go for finite element analysis of this, to take care of this, actual stress strain diagram, the non-linear portion of stress strain diagram is given as an input for analysis of any particular component when you go for structural analysis using finite element analysis in FEA. Okay, so almost 80% of the components fail because of fatigue failure, and you have to take care of this fatigue failure. So one of the critical mode of failure will be the fatigue failure. Okay, in our case, at least when we talk about design 1, then you are converting that fatigue load into a equivalent static load, and you try to design the component against equivalent static load. As in theory of machines, you have that equivalent linkage mechanism. You might have studied equivalent linkage mechanism. Yes, in theory of machines you had studied this. What is equivalent linkage mechanism? Yes. Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir.
It's this equivalent linkage mechanism, was it covered in theory of machines? Have you heard about equivalent linkage?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, fine. So generally, what is equivalent linkage mechanism? There are some mechanisms from schematic you can't identify. Most of the mechanisms are a 4-bar linkage mechanism. Now, power transmitted by the gear pair. If you see the gear pair, then how many links are there in a gear pair? If you see a driving gear mounted on a shaft, and with the help of driving gear, you find that driven gear is rotated, that driven gear is mounted on another shaft. So how many number of linkages you have in a gear? Yes, can you identify? How many number of linkages? Yes, anyone? गियर पे में कितने लिंकेज होते हैं? हेलो.
Yes, sir.
So how many number of linkages do you have in a gear pair? You might have solved this problem on degree of freedom हुआ होगा ना? Degree of freedom n is equal to 3 times of L in bracket L minus 1, ये इक्वेशन हुआ होगा. आपने डिग्री ऑफ फ्रीडम के प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व किए या नहीं?
Yes, sir.
हाँ, तो
Yes, sir.
in that you have to
Degree of freedom of gear is 2.
degree of freedom of gear is 2. How come? हाँ, नहीं, गलत है. कैसे 2 रहेगा?
1.
हाँ, it is 1. But in that to find out degree of freedom you need to identify number of links. तो आप मुझे बोलो गियर पेयर में कितने लिंक्स होते हैं?
3.
3 links.
So if you have 3 links, then how can that 3 link be a mechanism?
So there is one higher pair involved in it. So
तो
we convert that higher pair into 2. we
Yes.
convert that one link into two links. So
Uh-huh.
the total number of links becomes 4, and then the higher pair is converted into a lower pair.
Yes, so that particular procedure we call it as equivalent linkage mechanism. So if you try to draw the schematic of a gear pair, you have a shaft as one link, that is driving shaft as well as driven shaft, that all the shafts in any particular mechanism is treated as one link. Then second link is the driving gear and third link is a driven gear. So if you count, you get total 3 links. But whereas gear is a mechanism, it's not a structure. Then you need to convert that into an equivalent linkage mechanism. You have a standard procedure for that. You introduce one additional link over there at a point of contact. You draw a tangent line through the point of contact, and then you draw a normal line, and then to that normal line you draw a tangent line through the point of contact. This tangent line where your driving link meets this tangent line, you get driving shaft as one of the link, that is fixed link. Then driving gear will be treated as second link, and this tangent line cuts this driving gear, you take that as one pair, and this tangent line meets the driven gear, that is next link, you take that as second lower pair. So this imaginary link, the tangent line which you get, that is the imaginary additional link, you get it over there after converting a higher pair into lower pair. This link, this particular procedure we call it as equivalent linkage mechanism. Here you introduce one more imaginary link which converts higher pair into lower pairs, and now if you, with this imaginary link, you get 4 links in that mechanism, and now you can solve that problem to find out the degree of freedom. Clear with this? So likewise, you have the equivalent loading configuration in which the dynamic load is converted into equivalent static load. This again you will come to when you learn about inertia force analysis. There will have this equivalent force conversion. Dynamic load is converted into equivalent static load. Even D'Alembert's principle you might have learned. ये theory of machine पे हुआ होगा ना, D'Alembert's principle. Are you aware of this D'Alembert's principle? Yes. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So what is D'Alembert's principle?
So the sum of inertia force
Sum of
is equal to
inertia force is equal to.
4.
Okay, that is the outcome of D'Alembert's principle. But D'Alembert's principle is what it says, that all the mechanisms. Yes.
So
You are not very much. Your voice is breaking. Voice is breaking. Yes. What is D'Alembert's principle? So basically, D'Alembert's principle, it states that all the forces, moments, couple acting on any particular link will maintain that link in static equilibrium condition. Whatever forces, moments, couples are acting on a link, on any particular link, will tend to rotate the link, and then the inertia force or the reactive couple is generated in link, which tends to keep that link or body in static equilibrium position. And because of that, each and every body in universe you find that is in static equilibrium. Whatever planets you have, whatever satellites you launch in space, everyone maintains its static equilibrium position. Whatever irregular shape that body will have, that is because of D'Alembert's principle. An outcome of D'Alembert's principle, the D'Alembert's principle is used to convert a dynamic problem into an equivalent static problem. So here, you can't straight away attempt the problem of fatigue failures. You have fluctuating loads, and that you convert that into a equivalent static load. At least in design one, you attempt the problems against the static load. Even though if you come across with dynamic problems like IC engines and all that, you try to find out equivalent static load, and then you design that component against equivalent static load. No doubt you have design against fluctuating load, that too in coming semester, that is in next semester. Okay, so clear this. For time being, you have to remember that almost 80% of the component, more than 80% of the component fail against fatigue failure. And to make the component safe against fatigue failure, you have to take care of the endurance limit. Clear with this? Neither your yield strength nor ultimate strength. It is the endurance limit where you have to take care of the component to make it safe against fatigue failure. Okay. Next type of failure, that is fracture failure, or this you get it from fracture mechanics. Again, it is a typical kind of failure. So what is fracture? Yes, anyone? And where you have to take care of fracture? फ्रैक्चर क्या होता है? Yes, what is fracture failure?
Breaking of a component
yes.
in two pieces.
No.
Breaking of a component in two pieces.
That is altogether different. That is the final failure of any component. That fracture has nothing to do with this fracture failure. This is altogether different.
Formation of cup and hole in a beam.
No. Again, you are misleading. That is the final failure of any particular component when it goes beyond yield. Then it goes in plastic, and then after plastic it goes for sudden and total failure. That we call it as a fracture of the component. That is altogether different. But what is fracture over here? And when we account for, this is again a typical kind of failure. It is not possible in each and every components.
Formation of the cracks.
Yes, formation of a crack. So this fracture has nothing to do with the fracture failure of your UTM test. That is the final outcome of any component loaded up to its critical load and its worst loading condition. Then ultimately it fails into two parts, that is rupture or fracture. This is altogether different than that. This is when a component has a crack and there is a probability of that crack growing further, then you have to take care of fracture of that. That will lead to the failure. We call it as a fracture failure. If there is a crack in any particular component and if there is a probability of growing that crack under applied load, then you have to take care of fracture failure. Then there is probability of the component may fail against fracture. Okay? Is it clear with this? This is altogether different than that of your rupture failure of UTM machine. This has nothing to do with that rupture failure. Here, any structural component, any machine component, if it has a crack or even the pits, and there are probability of that pits going or leading into the cracks under application of load, then there is a probability of fracture failure. And to make a component safe against fracture failure, you find out the fracture toughness of that particular component. So again, fracture is a typical kind of failure, as buckling is a typical kind of failure where you don't get it in each and every case. Similarly, fracture is a typical kind of failure. You won't get that in each and every component. Only if that component has cracks or pits and there are probability of pits leading into cracks or cracks further growing under the application of load, then that will lead to a fracture failure. And to make a component safe against fracture failure, you have to take care of fracture toughness. You have a separate course called as fracture mechanics, and here you can study this fracture failure. This fracture failure was not realized when we started with design, or after World War II actually fracture mechanics came into existence, or when industrial revolution took place, machines were built up and components were manufactured. Still fracture was not considered as a failure. But what happened in World War II was an interesting phenomena for scientists. Generally in World War II, these ships, which the German ships or American ships, when they were going into deep sea at Antarctic area or Atlantic area, where the temperature was very, very less, almost a frozen temperature, these ships were literally breaking into two parts from the center, and they were not able to analyze why this is happening. That was all because of cold temperature the small cracks which were existing, corrosion cracks and all that, which were existing in the ships, because of very cold temperature, it was leading to fracture failure. That crack was suddenly growing because of that minus temperature, cold temperature, frozen temperature, and because of which you will find that ships are literally breaking into two parts from the center or from where the crack was growing further. And this phenomena was realized after World War II, that there are possibilities of cracks coming into the components, and that may grow under the application of load. That can be a thermal load, that can be the load applied on a component. So this was realized, and then after you came with a separate domain called fracture mechanics or fracture failure, in which this fracture mechanics you can study this total fracture. So it's altogether a different ball game. It has nothing to do with your static failure, deflection, or whatever. It's totally a separate domain. Clear this, okay? Even in your swords, you'll find in ancient times the wars were been fought with the swords, and in India you find the swords were very much advanced. The swords you will find while fighting, that was leading to cracks, and there are probability of failure of the swords. So in India they were using the technique that the sword was not manufactured with only one piece. A very thin sheet of that particular metal was folded into 2 to 3 folds, and with that 2 to 3 folds you will get a sword. And now if you get a crack in one particular fold, that was not leading to second fold or not to third fold. That crack was even that was failing, that will fail the first fold, but still second and third fold of that sword will be retaining, and it will not allow that total sword to fail into two parts. Okay, so it was the beauty of those Indian swords, and then it was being picked up further by Britishes when they took over the India. Okay, so this was being realized even in ancient time that there could be cracks and all those, but after World War II, it was strongly realized that components may fail because of fracture failure. And to make a component safe against fracture failure, you have to take care of fracture toughness. And fracture toughness is a property of the materials. It can be found out, or it can be measured by 3 different criterias. You have 3 different criterias with which you can measure fracture toughness. The most common criteria to measure fracture toughness is stress intensity factor, denoted as stress intensity factor K. Then second criteria to measure fracture toughness is J integral. And third criteria to measure fracture toughness is energy release rate. So what is fracture toughness? Yes, what is fracture toughness? You might have studied this property in material science. Yes, what is fracture toughness? Yes, anyone? क्या होता है fracture toughness? Yes, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Sir, resistance to crack propagation.
Resistance to crack propagation. Not very much correct. Yes, what is fracture toughness?
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have lecture now.
Okay,
From
okay,
4:15
okay.
it was actually.
Okay, fine. So we'll stop over here, and we continue this in next class. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
okay, fine. So we'll stop over here, and then we'll start in next class. Not to worry about attendance; it is automatically recorded. Okay, but only you have to ensure that you are present throughout the lecture. Only joining and leaving, the software may not read you for the attendance. Okay, clear with this?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Excuse me, sir.
yes.
You on Moodle you have arranged the lectures at 1:30 a.m. So lot of us cannot join using the link because the join option is disabled.
So I mean, you mean to say that I have to schedule it before 1:30 then?
No, sir.
PM,
You
sir, it is
have
actually.
scheduled it on 1:30 a.m. Instead of PM, you have scheduled it on AM.
but it is showing at right time then. The remind.
Because when we tried to join through the Moodle link, then it wasn't showing over there. Option wasn't there for join.
Okay, I'll try it for PM then, but I doubt it may go for midnight then. Huh? Okay, I'll try it and you can just cross check it. Okay.
And sir,
Huh.
I think that attendance is also not being recorded.
Attendance is recorded. I can see it over here now at my end.
Okay.
It is no. I don't have.
Sir, we wanted to confirm that because on Moodle it's showing only 30 students have attended. When you check on Moodle the attendance, so I think it may be only the number of people who have accessed the link via the Moodle login page. And so we wanted to confirm if for you it's showing all the numbers even if we have not been able to directly access it from Moodle.
Uh, at my end, I am getting at least. I had checked it for last first lecture. It was 164 count. Yesterday I have not checked. I'll check it again. So I'll ensure it what I am getting at my end. Okay. But hello.
Okay, yes, thank you, sir.
Yes, but I request everyone that you better
Yes, sir.
Yes,
ensure
sir.
that you have your Moodle link or Moodle account, na? Because the software is working out the grades or marks of attendance directly through your attendance. I mean, we need not have to do anything. It is marks are automatically counted and it is given for your attendance on whatever attendance you had maintained for that particular course. So you have to ensure that you have that Moodle link and Moodle account. Okay.
That is
So
the problem.
for the past 2 days, there was some problem with Moodle. So the page was down.
Uh-huh.
So some of us have accessed these lectures through the links that are sent on our WhatsApp groups.
But how it will matter? Even though if you join it through WhatsApp group, it will not create any problem, I will. Huh? Because that link is a Moodle link, na?
Yes, sir.
No, sir, the link is a
Ideally,
WebEx.
it should work.
Sir, the link is connected to WebEx and it's not connected to Moodle. So if we access it from Moodle, then the Moodle will detect the attendance and add to it. But sometimes the Moodle is just not letting us attend.
Okay. Why so?
It seems to be a problem with the software, some sort of bug, and so we can't access the lecture. So like what happened today, so we had to access it via copy pasting the link into a different address.
Okay, fine. Okay, don't worry.
So there is some issue of timing, I guess. If you could check with it.
Okay,
Because
okay.
on
You mean it is AM PM problem? Huh?
yeah, sir.
Okay. So for next week, instead of AM, I'll take it as PM, and let's see if it solves the problem. It is well and good. Otherwise, need not to worry of attendance. I have a count at my end, and I'll download it from there. Then, huh? Okay.
Sir, if you check on Moodle, then
Uh-huh.
there is one option where we can see the attendee list, and there on 25th August, no student have attended the lecture. Check.
Acha. Okay. I'll go through it. I'll check it. Don't worry. Huh?
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Fine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.